Got dreams of being a professional podcaster, but have no idea what you're doing?
This is impossible.
That's about to change.
A new kind of school.
Welcome to the Pod School Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. I had a bit of a panicked email the other day from somebody who had recorded their show in two separate parts and in two separate locations. And when they got to the stage where they were editing it together, they realised, well, this sounds different. Unfortunately, the second place that they recorded was a lot noisier than the first place. And they were asking me how they could make it sound like they recorded it all in one sitting. This is possible, but it is going to depend case by case on where you are recording, how things sound. But my biggest piece of advice, if you are recording somewhere different to where you usually record, so maybe you always record at your home office and then you've decided to whiz out and interview somebody in their office or in a meeting space or outside in a park or somewhere. If you are somewhere that is different to where you usually are, I would always record ambient noise, and that is just the noise without any talking of where you are. So for example, if you went to a park, I would always go there earlier or after the guest had left at the end. Just sit there with my microphone and record audio just saying nothing so that I can get the sound of where I am. The reason that I get that is because it can help with the edit later on. So sometimes you can edit things, and if you're in a place which is particularly noisy, those edits can be obvious if you cut certain things out. And so sometimes just taking that clear ambient noise that you have recorded and almost laying that under like a Band-Aid underneath that audio can cover up those edits. The other thing that it can do is if you need to re-record anything after the fact, so maybe you asked your guest a question when you were interviewing them and it goes on and on and on for 2.5 minutes and you think, gosh, I really wish I had a 20-second version of that question, you could re-record that question in your home studio and then lay the audio of the place that you were underneath that recording, and it takes a little bit of adjusting, but sometimes you can get it to sound like you actually were recording there. So that can be very useful if you are recording out and about. If you are in the situation that this person was in, it might be a touch more difficult. It depends on how different the sound is between places, and it takes some audio tweaking and some knowledge of how to get things right to do that. If you've recorded zero ambient noise and you can't get back to the location where you were, then you're probably a bit stuffed and you just need to be very open and honest with your audience. Sometimes I think we can be a bit scared if things go wrong that we just want to find a way to kind of make it look like we didn't make a mistake or make it look like we didn't do things. But your audience aren't idiots and they will hear a difference. And rather than just having two separate parts of an interview that go from dead quiet room to outdoors or something like that and making zero reference to it whatsoever, just pretending that the doors of your office flung open and then the wildlife came in halfway through, is going to seem a bit disingenuous to your audience. So if you are going to be recording in different locations, always be mindful of recording that local sound, that ambient sound that can really help you later on in the edit. And I usually record 45 seconds or something because I don't usually need any more than that. But gosh, if you were going to do 5 minutes of audio somewhere else and you wanted to record 5 minutes of sound, it's always better to have a longer track than trying to just take 30 seconds of audio and loop it, because that will start to sound like you've looped something. Things will sound very similar and your audience will be like, haven't I heard that car go past 98,000 times in this interview? So sometimes recording a long bit of audio, if you've got a lot of audio that needs some noise under it, can be helpful. But if you can't do that and things sound different or you've made a mistake with something, just be open and honest. If it's really bad, you might have to re-record, and that's a good lesson to learn sometimes too, because you won't make that mistake again. But don't be afraid to be honest with your audience when things don't sound a certain way. Sometimes when I've recorded episodes of my podcast, you've got to start somewhere at my home office. In the summer, it is impossible to sit there with the bifold doors closed. So I've had to open it up, and every time I seem to be recording at a time where the neighborhood comes alive and the aeroplanes go overhead and somebody's leaf blower starts up next door, then a dog dog starts barking down the road, and I will just refer to it either in the process of the interview. So, I don't want to have a dog barking that sounds like it's basically on mic and make no reference to it. Sometimes I try and bring that into the interview so that my audience realizes it's okay. Like, I know this is happening too, and it's fine. This is where we are. And hey, it just seems like you're joining us for this relaxed conversation. Or if it's really bad and I haven't really thought it's that bad until the point where I get to the edit, I might record a little something at the beginning and just say, hey, just a little note to say that you might hear the sounds of the neighborhood, and I apologize for that. I would very rarely do that because it's rare that would be so distracting that it's frustrating. And if it was, I probably wouldn't use the audio at all. But don't be afraid to be honest with your audience and say, hey, this is going to sound a little bit different in the middle because I recorded this interview in 2 parts. I couldn't get a hold of my guest for the whole stretch, so I managed to get him on one day and then on another day. So just excuse the little jump in the middle. But I hope you really enjoy the show anyway. It's not like the audio that they're going to get in the second half is going to be so blisteringly terrible. And if it is, please throw it out and start again. But don't be afraid to let them know that things have been done a little bit differently. You would be surprised at how willing to accept those things they are. Of course, you can't do it all the time, but sometimes life happens and these things need to just be addressed, and then you can do it right the next time and not make the same mistake again. I hope that's helped. If you've got any questions that you want answered, please head to podschoolpodcast.com and hit me up at the contact page. If you are loving the show, I would love you to leave a review in iTunes or wherever you listen, and I will see you next week. Until then, happy podcasting.
That's all for today.